Tato Jayamudiraye. The meaning of this is, before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Today's verse. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, entitled Creation, Chapter 4. Vyasadeva divided the Vedas, text number 2. Saunaka Uvacha Suta Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadanangvara Katham Bhagavatim Punyam Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha. Saunaka Uvacha Suta Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadanangvara Vadano Vadatangvara Katham Bhagavatim Punyam Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha. Saunaka Uvacha Suta Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadatambara Katham Bhagavatim Punyam Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha. Saunaka Uvacha
Suta Suta Mahabhaga
Suta Suta Mahabhaga
Katham Bhagavatim Punyam Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha.
Saunaka Uvacha Suta Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadatambara Katham Bhagavatim Punyam Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha. Saunaka Uvacha Suta Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadatambara Katham Bhagavatim Punyam Yada Bhagavan Chukaha. Saunaka Uvacha Suta Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadatambara Katham Bhagavatim Punyam Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha. Saunaka Uvacha Suta Suta Mahabhaga Vadano Vadatambara Katham Bhagavatim Punyam Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha. Online.
Shaunaka Uvacha
Subhu Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you hear me?
Still on mute.
Can hear you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Sunita Mataji is chanting, Prabhu.
Anybody else wants to chant?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you hear?
He is not able to hear us, I think.
Sunita Mataji?
Yeah,
She
yeah,
dropped.
Prabhu. Yeah, yes. Prabhu.
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay.
We
Okay.
can hear on Sadan Prabhu is not able to hear.
Sunita
Can you
Mataji,
hear
are
me,
you able to
Prabhu?
chant?
Shaunaka Uvacha.
Shaunaka Uvacha.
Suta Suta Maha.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu is
Suta
not able
Suta
to hear us.
Mahabhaga.
No, we lost the shloka.
Mataji?
Just a second.
Yes, yes, Prabhu. I can't see the shloka now.
Hold on. 1 second. I'm sorry. Actually, the laptop was connecting to a wireless device. So now can you
Yeah.
go ahead?
Yes, Prabhu. Can you hear me, Prabhu?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Shaunaka Uvacha.
Saunaka Vacha.
Suta Suta Mahabhaga.
Suta Mahabhaga.
Vadano Vadatamvara.
Vadano Vadatamvara.
Katham Bhagavatim Punyam.
Katham Bhagavatim Punyam.
Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha.
Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha.
Shaunaka Uvacha.
Saunaka Vacha.
Suta Suta Mahabhaga.
Suta Mahabhaga.
Vadano Vadatamvara.
Vadano Vadatamvara.
Katham Bhagavatim Punyam.
Katham Bhagavatim Punyam.
Yadaha Bhagavan Shukaha.
Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha.
Saunaka Vacha,
Saunaka Vacha.
Suta Suta Mahabhaga,
Suta Mahabhaga.
Vadano Vadatambara,
Vadano Vadatamvara.
Patam Bhagavatim Punyam,
Katham Bhagavatim Punyam.
Yada Aha Bhagavan Chukaha.
Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha. Anybody else wants to chant?
Shaunaka Uvacha.
Saunaka Vacha.
Suta Suta Mahabhaga.
Suta Mahabhaga.
Vadano Vadatamvara.
Vadano Vadatamvara.
Katham Bhagavatim Punyam.
Katham Bhagavatim Punyam.
Yadaha Bhagavan Chuka.
Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha. Devika Mataji, do you want to try? Okay, you're on mute. Right. Synonyms: Saunakaha. Saunaka. Uvacha. Said. Suta. O Suta Goswami. Mahabhaga. The most fortunate. Vada. Please speak. Naha. Unto us. Vadatam. Of those who can speak. Vara. Respected. Katham. Message. Bhagavatim. Of the Bhagavatam. Punyam. Pious. Yat. Which. Aha. Said. Bhagavan. Greatly powerful. Sukaha. Sri Sukadev Goswami. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Saunaka said, O Suta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Sukadev Goswami. Translation with repetition. Saunaka said, O Suta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Sukadev Goswami. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Suta Goswami is twice addressed herein by Saunaka Goswami out of great joy because he and the members of the assembly were eager to hear the text of Bhagavatam uttered by Sukadev Goswami. They were not interested in hearing it from a bogus person who would interpret in his own way to suit his own purpose. Generally, the so-called Bhagavatam reciters are either professional readers or so-called learned impersonalists who cannot enter into the transcendental personal activities of the Supreme Person. Such impersonalists twist some meanings out of Bhagavatam to suit and support impersonalist views, and the professional readers at once go to the 10th canto to misexplain the most confidential part of the Lord's pastimes. Neither of these reciters are bona fide persons to recite Bhagavatam. Only one who is prepared to present Bhagavatam in the light of Sukadev Goswami, and only those who are prepared to hear Sukadev Goswami and his representative are bona fide participants in the transcendental discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Jnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. It's a very beautiful verse. They started this new chapter. It's called Vedavyas Divided the Vedas. Something like that. Vyasadeva. The fourth chapter is appearance of Narada. The appearance of Narada. So we've just discussed the first verse last time. And today we are discussing the second verse. So if you see the verse, it's saying Suta Suta Mahabhaga. It is spoken by Saunaka Muni, Saunaka Rishi, who is telling Saunaka Uvacha, Suta Suta Mahabhaga, Vadano Vadatam Vara, Katham Bhagavatim Punyam, Yadaha Bhagavan Chukaha. So, Suta Suta Mahabhaga. Mahabhaga is the most fortunate. There can be fortunate people in this world, more fortunate, but he's the most fortunate. Suta Suta Mahabhaga. Who is the most fortunate? The most fortunate here is Suta Goswami. Why? Why we will see. Vadano Vadatam Vara. No is actually Naha, to us, unto us. Please speak. Please speak. You know, they are showing great respect to Suta Goswami because you are the Vadatam Vara. Of those who can speak, you are the topmost. What you should speak? Katham Bhagavatim Punyam. The most pious Srimad Bhagavatam, the most pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yadaha Bhagavan Shukaha, which you heard from Bhagavan Sukaha, the powerful, the greatly powerful Sukadev Goswami. So that is the verse. Saunaka said, O Suta Goswami, Suta, you are the most fortunate, Mahabhaga, and respected of all those who can speak. Vadano Vadatam Vara. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, Katham Bhagavatim Punyam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Sukadev Goswami. Yad Aha Bhagavan Chukaha. Now, let's read the translation one more time. Saunaka said, O Suta Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Sukadev Goswami. So as we can see that this verse is spoken by Saunaka Rishi, who was heading the sages at Naimisharanya. And he is requesting Suta Goswami that because you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Vadatam Vara, you are the most respected. So then you should speak, you must speak. And what you should speak? Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Sukadev Goswami. Very interestingly, the first line of this purport, Prabhupada says that Suta Goswami is twice addressed herein by Saunaka Goswami out of great joy because he and the members of the assembly were eager to hear the text of Bhagavatam uttered by Sukadev Goswami. So if you see, it is not a grammatical mistake that Saunaka Rishi is making by addressing Suta Goswami twice. Suta Mahabhaga. No. Prabhupada is writing in the purport that Suta Goswami is twice addressed herein by Saunaka Goswami out of great joy. Because they are so ecstatic, and why they are so joyful, we will see that in a minute. But out of great joy because he and the members of the assembly were eager to hear the text of Bhagavatam uttered by Sukadev Goswami. That Sukadev Goswami who uttered this wonderful text of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was heard by Suta Goswami, now they are very eager to hear that message from Suta Goswami. So they are very excited. And that is how Saunaka Rishi is addressing Suta Mahabhaga. Vadano Vadatam Vara. Because you are the topmost of people who have heard and recited. You are the best. You are the most respected. Vada. Katham Bhagavatim Punyam. Bhagavan Yadaha Bhagavan Sukha. So the Bhagavan Sukadev Goswami, sometimes even the great personalities are addressed as Bhagavan, Yadaha Bhagavan Sukha. So here Sukadev Goswami is addressed as the most powerful and the transcendental person from whom you have heard. Please recite this. One most important characteristic of an aspiring devotee is this eagerness to hear the text of Bhagavatam, which is mentioned in the first line of the purport. The reason why we should be eager to hear is if we see all our senses that we are blessed with, even eyes, sometimes we have to close the eyes, sometimes we sleep. But ears are always open. Even if one is asleep, the ears are still open. Even if somebody has got problems with sound and put something to block his ear holes, still he can hear. So when such a powerful instrument is given, one needs to understand the importance of this and one needs to know how to utilize it properly. If one is not careful, and then one is exposed to all kinds of sounds. And when one is exposed to all kinds of sounds, they have a profound impact on our consciousness. That is why Prabhupada says that a devotee should avoid prajalpa, should avoid gramya katha. Why? If he constantly hears this gramya katha, it constantly brings him down to this material world. The consciousness remains in this material world. So that is why one has to hear transcendental topics related to the Lord, and how should he hear? What should be the process of hearing? And what is the most important characteristic? The most important characteristic is eagerness to hear. And why it is so important, let's try to understand in the time that we have together. I want you to go back in our first canto, third chapter discussion. This is a verse which we had seen earlier. This verse was spoken by Sutta Goswami, and he says, Atheha dhanya bhagavanta ittha yadva sudeve khilalokanathe kurvanti sarvatmakamatma bhava nayatra bhuya parivarta ugra. Why should one hear this message with eagerness? Because the why is always important in life. So here, Sutta Goswami was telling, while answering to the questions of the sages of Naimisharanya, Atheha dhanya bhagavanta ittha yad vasudeve khilalokanathe. So this powerful message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which he's going to describe, after that he talks about what is this Bhagavatam, but he's saying this message is the most successful, Atheha dhanya, most powerful. It is actually, it's a rare opportunity. It's one of the greatest fortune to hear this. Atheha dhanya. To hear means to read, to understand, to assimilate, to apply. Atheha dhanya bhagavanta ittha. So it is most successful, and one also gets one becomes cognizant, something like that. Prabhupada uses the word meaning of bhagavanta. One becomes knowledgeable in spiritual knowledge, not in material things. Atheha dhanya bhagavanta ittha. One, it is successful and one becomes knowledgeable. Atheha dhanya bhagavanta ittha yad vasudeve khilalokanathe. Yad vasudeve khilalokanathe means one develops love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is also very rare. Yad vasudeve khilalokanathe kurbanti sarvat makamatma bhava nayatra bhuya parivarta ugraha. The last line, if you see, nayatra bhuya parivarta ugraha. Ugraha, this cruel, this terrible cycle of birth and death. Na yatra parivarta ugraha. One does not enter into this. We are forced. We are forced to become old. We are forced to become diseased. We are forced to die, vacate everything and go. It's a very ugra, it's a very cruel cycle of birth and death. Nayatra bhuya parivarta ugraha. No more entering into this cruel cycle of birth and death. Okay, what else? Kurvanti sarvat makamatma bhava. The word sarvatmakam, if we see in the word-to-word meaning, actually Prabhupada says 100%. Kurbanti sarvat makamatma bhava. Because there are so many people who promise so many things. You come here, you'll get this. You do that, you'll get that. Here, Sutta Goswami in Srimad Bhagavatam is saying this is a guarantee. This is a 100% guarantee process. If one understands, if one hears and assimilates and realizes this message of Bhagavatam, then he will get transcendental knowledge, and he will also overcome this cruel cycle of birth and death. So it's not some ordinary book that we are trying to discuss for some intellectual appreciation or understanding or intellectual kicks or anything of that sort. No, this message is transcendental. That is why in the very next verse, Sutta Goswami says, Idam Bhagavatam Namam Puranam Brahma Samhitam. Nishrayasaya Lokasya Chakara Bhagavan Rishi. Idam Bhagavatam Namam. This Bhagavatam is not different from the Lord. The Lord, when he appears in different forms, like half lion, half man, he is called Narsimha. He appears as tortoise, he is called Kurma. He appears as a fish, he is called Matsya. He appears as a book, Bhagavatam. He appears as a book, then he is called Srimad Bhagavatam. Idam Bhagavatam Namam Puranam Brahma Samhitam, not different from the Lord. So that is why this message is so important. And if you see the translation, only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful, dhanya, and perfectly cognizant. Bhagavanta, for such inquiries, invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead. Yad Vasudeve Khilalokanathe, who is the proprietor of all the universes, and guarantees 100% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. Dreadful, Prabhupada is writing, Ugra. So, and the important thing is Sarvatmakam, and it's a guarantee, not a warranty if somebody wants to get it. It's a guarantee by such inquiries. So that is why one should hear this with eagerness. With eagerness, people can hear in different ways, but the hearing, if it is with eagerness, it makes a lot of difference. Now, what is the power of hearing? That's what I'm trying to focus on this. Hearing only is not important. Quality of hearing makes all the difference. And these are all very subtle principles. For example, in Kunti Maharani prayers, emphasis on quality is given. I don't have the verse right now, but I can tell you the reference of that. Very beautiful thing, how Prabhupada says. There are people who are also chanting. They take up this process of chanting Hare Krishna. And they think we are chanting Hare Krishna, we are doing this certain minimum number of rounds, and life is good, well set. But no. There is a quality of chanting. There is a quality to our hearing process. So in two of the purports, 1.8.13, the first one, Prabhupada is saying, and he behaves according to the quality or degree of devotional service rendered by the devotees. He is actually referring to the Supreme Lord. He behaves according to the quality or degree of the devotional service rendered by the devotees. People may say, I'm engaging in devotional service. But what is the quality? Quality means what is the mood? What am I trying to do? Is it trying to attract the attention or surpass someone? Or is it really meant to please the Lord? So that quality of devotional service makes a lot of difference. And in another purport, Prabhupada writes about the quality of chanting. There is a quality of such utterances also, the chanting that we are doing. It depends on the quality of feeling. A helpless man can feelingly utter the holy name of the Lord, whereas a man who utters the same holy name in great material satisfaction cannot be so sincere. Materially puffed up person may utter the holy name of the Lord occasionally, but he is incapable of uttering the name in quality. So the activities, any simple devotional activity that we are doing in our life, the difference is, that's why there are devotional services in different modes, in modes of goodness, in modes of passion, in modes of ignorance. So if the devotional service is not performed with the right quality, it affects our progress in spiritual life as well. Same holds true for hearing. Very surprised, you'll be surprised to hear that actually the hearing is under the influence of three modes. The hearing in the modes of ignorance has got this characteristics or symptoms of anger, enviousness, and pride. If somebody is hearing in the mode of passion, then the thinking process is everyone can be impressed when I speak these words. So the purpose of hearing is to, so that I can get these words, I can speak, and when I speak, people will be impressed and they will say that I'm a good devotee. And the hearing in the mode of goodness is at least the best amongst the three modes, where one wants to free oneself from the material entanglement. That is hearing in the mode of goodness. But yeah, as I said, the worst is hearing in the mode of ignorance, where somebody is just, these are the symptoms of anger and enviousness and pride. But of course, hearing has to happen beyond these three modes of material nature, where one is hearing to please the Lord, where one is hearing to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nothing else. And that requires some amount of attention, not just some rapt attention. And that requires humility. Very interestingly, the last verse of the previous chapter, when we had discussed this, how do we develop this rapt attention for hearing? Prabhupada says, the word nirvista, actually this is nirvista, means that Sutta Goswami drank the juice of Bhagavatam through his ears. He drank the juice through his ears. That is the real process of receiving Bhagavatam. One should hear with rapt attention from the real person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. What is the secret? No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. And no one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. So rapt attention will not come if one is not pure in mind. Purity in mind will not come if one is not pure in action. Purity in action will not come if one is not pure in eating, sleeping, mating, and different things. But having said this, Prabhupada, the last sentence, he gives a lot of hope when he says, but somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Shri Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. Somehow or other, you may not have even all these things to do, but somehow or other, if one is sincere, is eager to hear, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right person at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. Prabhupada often used to say to his Western disciples, sometimes he will be talking to some guests in Hindi and they would not understand anything. But still Prabhupada says you should just hear with rapt attention, because that sound vibration, hearing from a pure devotee, his words, even though we don't understand many times, still has a transcendental, powerful impact on our subtle consciousness, on our subtle body. The attention for hearing in Prabhupada was noticed by his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He noticed that he has an eagerness to hear. It was during this Vrindavan Parikrama where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had organized this Brajamandal Parikrama, and they were going to different places, staying overnight, and visiting different places and hearing the pastimes. One such occasion when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was not well, he decided that he would not be able to join for the parikrama. So there was an announcement made in the morning, in the daytime, that those who want to go can go with the parikrama party, but those who want to stay back will get the benefit of hearing Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur speak. There were very few who stayed back, because everybody, in this kind of an environment will be interested in just going, seeing places. But Srila Prabhupada stayed back, and that was noticed by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Okay. If we look back in our first canto, second chapter, how does this eagerness to hear develop? Where does it come from? And why should we develop? So if we see in the first canto, second chapter, we saw that that is divinity and divine services. It is mentioned that of all the varieties of duties that we have, the most important or the highest duty is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve is by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste, divisions, and orders of life, is to please the Personality of Godhead. I write it correctly? This verse is Atapumbe Dvija Shreshta Varnashrama Vibhagasa Swanushtitasya Pumsas. What is the verse? Atapumbe Dvija Shreshta Varnashrama Vibhagasa Swanushtitasya Dharmasya Samsiddhir Haritosha. So Samsiddhir Haritosha is actually our That's the goal of our life, to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ata kumbhir dvijashreshtha varnashrama vibhagasah swanushthitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. That the highest perfection one can achieve is by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste and division and order of life to please the Personality of Godhead. Question is how? And very nicely in subsequent verses, Bhagavatam tells that by rendering devotional service to devotees in Srimad Bhagavatam. Because in the beginning days, there is lack of faith, there is no attraction, there is no taste for engaging in devotional service to the Lord. So to develop that taste, because that is what is the highest perfection of human life, how do we develop that taste? How does it start? So there is this verse in the same first canto, second chapter, 16th verse. Sushrusho shraddhadhanasya vasudeva katharuchihi shan mahatsevaya vipraha punyatirtha nishevanat. For twice born sages, Dvijaha, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. And by such service, one gains affinity for hearing the message of Vasudeva. So the affinity or the eagerness to hear Krishna Katha will only come by engaging in devotional service to a pure devotee. By serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. Sushrusho Shraddhadhanasya Vasudeva Katharuchi Shyan Mahat Sevaya Vipraha Punya Tirtha Nishevanat. So, and then once one engages in devotional service, hears Bhagavatam, serves the pure Bhagavatam, then as you know, the subsequent verses it is mentioned in that same series, that there comes a stage where the Lord himself, seated in our heart, cleanses all the anarthas. The next. The Lord himself cleanses all the Shundata Sugatha Krishna. What is the translation there? What is the verse number? 70. So Krishna, after one develops a affinity to hear and engages in devotional service to a pure devotee, then the Lord who is seated in the heart as Paramatma, in everybody's heart, he actually cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his message, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So actually, if you see, our process is Adav Shraddha Hata Sadhu Sangha Tata Bhajana Kriya, right? So it all starts with that faith. But that the faith is developed in the heart when somebody hears with some faith. Somebody hears. The hearing is the important thing to develop the faith. Otherwise, the faith will also not come. Very nice example is given by a devotee in her memory of Srila Prabhupada. She is very well known, very nice devotee actually. I mean, very popular in ISKCON movement. So she was sharing that by some circumstances, this is before her joining Krishna consciousness. She was in Calcutta. She was in India, and she was with her husband. Not husband at that time; they were not married. She was with her boyfriend, and it was the year 1971. So 1971, if you recall, there was a war between India and Bangladesh, India and Pakistan, and that's how Bangladesh came up. So there was war, and in 1971, she was recalling that there were a lot of refugees who came from Bangladesh. So, I mean, if it's thousands of or maybe lakhs of refugees came to Calcutta. And the situation was very chaotic. And she had a friend who was in the Calcutta temple, of Calcutta ISKCON temple, and she had invited her to stay in the temple for some time. And she went to the temple and she saw that there were just few devotees who were there, and they were all completely burnt out. They were not talking to each other. They are all in some kind of, there's no cooperation. They're all in, we are doing a lot of services. And when she entered, her first impression is that the temple is not cleaned, is not maintained well. And then, of course, there were deities, and she was fond of chanting Hare Krishna. She did all of those, but she saw that everybody is very disturbed and perturbed, and they were all like, there is some kind of confusion going on. So she was desperate to go out of the temple because she was not liking that whole experience of being in the temple, because it is not maintained properly and the devotees are not gelling well amongst each other. And she was very, she was just waiting, when will I get out of this place? At that time, her friend told her that you should wait for a few more days as Srila Prabhupada is arriving here. And she thought to herself, okay, I've never met him, but I would like to meet him because he's a pure devotee, and I should see what he is saying. And so she waited basically for a week or so, and Srila Prabhupada arrived there. And when Srila Prabhupada arrived there, he gave a Bhagavatam class. He looked at all the Vaishnavas in the temple, and then he could sense that there is some problem when they are not in their proper consciousness. They are not doing things as they should do, which happens many times. Sometimes, the Vigraha whom we are worshipping can become Galagraha if it is not done properly. If it is not done with the right consciousness, it can become a burden. So Prabhupada could sense that. And the next day in the morning, there was a Ishtagoshti in Prabhupada's room. So all the devotees were seated there, and including this devotee, this lady who was not initiated at that time, along with other devotees. They all were seated, and Prabhupada started talking how we are not this material body, how we are spirit soul, and we have got nothing to do with this material world, and how under the influence of these three modes of material nature, we forget our identity and start fighting, competing, and arguing with each other. Whereas each one of us are individually part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and we are meant to render devotional service to Him. And then he spoke for some more time, but this lady, actually, she recalls that this has got nothing to do with the problem that was going on. She was expecting that Prabhupada will say probably, the senior leader or the temple president should act in a particular way, or the devotees who are conducting or carrying themselves in a particular way should change, something like that she was expecting. But when she heard Prabhupada at that point in time, so she was first of all not interested in staying there in that whole unclean environment, and the devotees are not gelling well. But she told those transcendental words, when that entered into her ear holes, there was some transformation which happened. She told that, being exposed to Krishna consciousness, having heard it from her friend, she knew what is the philosophy. She knew that, we are not this body, we are spirit soul. But when she heard it from Srila Prabhupada's mouth, when it entered through her ear holes, it made some transformation. The same words, but it had a different impact. That is why in our Guru Puja song, we sing this particular line, one line which comes as Guru Mukha Padma Bhakya Chittite Koriya Aikya Arana Koriho Mane Asa. So Guru Mukha Padma Bhakya. One day, actually, Prabhupada, this is one of the room conversations. If you search, you can get this. Asked his devotees that none of you actually understand the meaning of these two lines. Guru Mukha Padma Bhakya Chittite Koriya Aikya Arana Koriho Mane Asa. So, the devotees were trying to hear what Prabhupada wanted to say. What is the meaning of these two lines? Because they're so important. We sing this every day. So Prabhupada said, Guru Mukha Padma Bhakya. Guru's business is only describing about the spiritual world, the Lord who is also compared with lotus in various ways. Nama Pankajanaabhaya, Nama Pankajanetraya, Namaste Pankajandre. So many places. So since he is describing the spiritual world, or Goloka Vrindavan, which is in the shape of a lotus, and talking about the Supreme Lord who is also compared with various lotuses, his mouth becomes Guru Mukha Padma Bhakya. His from his lotus mouth, that's how it becomes lotus mouth. He's talking about the spiritual world and the spiritual position of each one of us and the Lord. Guru Mukha Padma Bhakya Chittite Koriya Aikya. This is another important thing. Chittite Koriya Aikya. One has to, Aikya literally means to become one. But becoming one with the words means what? Means one has to fully abide and follow by the instructions of the spiritual master. Guru Mukha Padma Bhakya Chittite Koriya Aikya Ar na Koriho Mune Asa. All other desires, this thing, that thing, let me get some work for some time, do this, get that thing, get this material thing be fulfilled. Arana koriho mane asa. No other desire other than this. So when we hear, this transcendental sound vibration, which is coming from the lotus mouth of spiritual master, when it enters into our ears, it does the transformation. So that hearing has to happen. That's why it has to be a quality hearing. Unless it is a quality hearing, it will not work. Interestingly, there was one, I think in last class, Prabhu was asking this doubt, how, and this question is raised by Parikshit Maharaj in 10th canto, where he says that we are using this air, which is material. We are using our tongue, which is material energy. And with all this air, the material tongue, we are vibrating the sound vibration, which is transcendental. So how do we understand that with our material tongue, material air, and material energy, we can touch the transcendental thing and it can have an impact on us? This is a question which is asked by Parikshit in the 10th canto. And the answer which is given is very nice by Sukadev Goswami. He says, everything belongs to Krishna, including our tongue, including the air, including the, whatever the material senses we are using. Everything belongs to Krishna. And every matter, everything that is material can be Krishnized, can be spiritualized. We offer food to the Lord, and by the glance of the Lord, the food becomes spiritualized. Similarly, even if it is material tongue, material air, which is used to produce this sound, since Krishna and Krishna's sound, they are non-different, so everything becomes spiritualized, and we directly, get in touch with the spiritual potency. So, I'll come to this verse a little later. Okay, this is another thing which I found from Vedaves, very interesting. What are the benefits of eager hearing? What are the benefits of hearing with eagerness? If we hear with eagerness, if we hear offenselessly, free from the influence of the modes of material nature, these are different adjectives which are used, then one becomes fearless. One becomes free of lamentation. One becomes understood. One becomes peaceful and happy. One becomes detached and knowledgeable. One invokes the presence of Krishna in one's life. One receives Krishna's mercy. The place where one resides, that place gets transformed to Vaikuntha. And also one develops how to preach nicely to others. And just by simply this eagerness to hear that one thing, we can go back home, back to Godhead, Prabhupada says. So before I conclude, I want to share this very interesting thing which happened in the life of Prithu Maharaj, who was born to this demon, King Vena, and he was performing this Ashwamedha Yajna, or this sacrifice, 100 horse sacrifices. And when he was about to complete, when he has done 99, thrice he was, his attempt was thwarted by Indra, who didn't want Prithu Maharaj to complete this Ashwamedha Yajna. He came in disguise, he stole the horse. A lot of things happened. But ultimately, Brahma comes and tells King Prithu to not to do this 100 Ashwamedha Yajna, 100 horse sacrifices. Just to abort that activity and be satisfied with 99 horse sacrifices. He does that, and just because he does that, the Lord, Supreme Lord, becomes pleased and he appears there. Vishnu appears there. And Prithu Maharaj offers some prayers, and those prayers that he offers is very, very relevant, very much related to what we are discussing. So what does he offer in his prayers, Prithu Maharaj? So the prayer that he offers actually is there in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So the prayer that Prithu Maharaj offers, that beautiful prayers. I'm not going to the Sanskrit verse. I'll just read the translation. So the when Vishnu was very pleased and he asked for any benediction, that time Prithu Maharaj is asking, my dear Lord, I therefore do not wish to have the benediction of merging into your existence, a benediction in which there is no existence of the nectarian beverage of your lotus feet. I want the benediction of at least 1 million years, for thus I may be able to hear about the glories of your lotus feet from the mouths of your pure devotees. So it's very interesting. Actually, he first declares what he doesn't want. And after having spoken what clearly he doesn't want, he says what he wants. Nakamaya natha tadapi aham kvachin nayatra yusmat charanam dujasavaha Mahatam antar hridayan mukhachyuta vidhatsva karna yutamesha me varaha. Only thing that he is asking is, give me 1 million years so that I can hear the glorification of yours from the mouth of pure devotees. I don't want anything else. No, merging into your finishing this material existence and merging with you. I don't want any of those things. I want the benediction of at least 1 million years. But thus I may be able to hear about the glories of your lotus feet from the mouths of pure devotees. And in the next verse he says that, my dear Lord, you are glorified by the selected verses uttered by great personalities. Such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. When the transcendental vibration from the mouths of great devotees carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. Devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusion about the values of life. My dear Lord, I therefore do not need any other benediction for the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotees. Very nice, actually. So I'll repeat this. My dear Lord, you are glorified by the selected verses uttered by great personalities. So that's why the Lord is also known as Uttama Shloka. He is glorified by selected verses by his pure devotees. And such glorification of your lotus feet is just like a saffron particles. And when the transcendental vibration from the mouth of great devotees carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, when the transcendental vibration from the mouths of great devotees carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. Devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusion about the value of life. My dear Lord, I therefore do not need any benediction for the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotee. In that verse, in the purport, Prabhupada mentions one very interesting point, and with that we will conclude today's discussion. This is what Prabhupada mentions in the purport. Although when a pure devotee speaks, the articulation of his voice may resemble the sound of this material sky. The voice is spiritually very powerful because it touches the particles of saffron dust on the lotus feet of the Lord. As soon as a sleeping living entity hears the powerful voice emanating from the mouth of a pure devotee, he immediately remembers his eternal relationship with the Lord, although up until that moment he had forgotten everything. So this is the effect of hearing from the mouth of a pure devotee, Guru Mukha Padma Bhakya. Although when a pure devotee speaks, the articulation of his voice may resemble the sound of this material sky. It may look like, he's talking like a other material mundane person, but his voice resembles the sound of this material sky. Although it resembles that, the voice is spiritually very powerful because it touches the particles of saffron dust on the lotus feet of the Lord. And as soon as those dust from the lotus feet of the Lord, the saffron particle, it hits a sleeping living entity, he hears the powerful voice, then he immediately remembers his eternal relationship with the Lord. Although up until that moment he had forgotten everything. So this is the wonderful opportunity which is available for us every day. And this is something which we should all try and aspire to develop the ability, to develop the attitude of hearing with eagerness. And there are various methods, and there are various ways, as we saw different places Prabhupada is explaining how one can develop that rapt attention and eagerness to hear. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. Answer is yes. Nobody is born with that rapt attention, or we have our attention which is absorbed in other things. We hear if we want to hear. So there is a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing, but the word used here everywhere is hearing, but hearing with rapt attention. So one has to develop that. One has to at least attempt for it. Just by being sincerely attempting, as she is mentioning, just she heard Prabhupada that day. And of course, there was one more thing which Prabhupada mentioned very interestingly in that Ishtagoshti. So she heard Prabhupada say that, how we are not this body and we've got nothing to do with this material world. And after that, Prabhupada says that how in his life also he has taken so much of austerities for preaching this Krishna consciousness, because those devotees were all burnt out and they were feeling fatigue and tiredness and some such feelings. So, and interestingly, she says, what austerities Prabhupada said that he has gone through. Hmm? Poverty. Poverty. What? He didn't have money. Okay. I mean, we would expect that Prabhupada, when he's saying that austerity, he would have said something like this, that I didn't have money, or I had 2 heart attacks. We say little thing, something happens to our body, we immediately say something happened to me. How will I do devotional service? But you know what Prabhupada said, the austerity that he has to go through? He said that, I had to go through the austerity of sharing the refrigerator where somebody was keeping non-veg. Means he had to compromise this, even though he was not, but he was saying it's the regulative principles he had to compromise. That's the austerity he said. He didn't say that he had 2 heart attacks or he was poor or anything of that sort. So when we are saying austerity also, what is the definition of austerity? And that struck her. Just doing some physical this thing, we think we are doing austerity, but austerity is when it comes to a position where you're compromising your following of the 4 regulative principles. So the whole thing is, if one sincerely attempts to hear, as we saw all the benefits, one develops the attitude of hearing with rapt attention. Any other question? The Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki Nitai Gaur Premanande.